In the mid-1500s and early 1600s, England was ruled by Queen Elizabeth I of the Tudor family. While this period was called a golden age for its flourishing artistic, literary, and intellectual scene, it was also famous for its wealth inequality. Like today, one's position in society significantly influenced one's quality of life, the sturdiness of your home, how much food you had, and how much property you could own. Also like today, the upper-class gentry had several ways of growing their wealth. They owned extensive land and rented it out, which provided a passive form of income that they could live on. They also influenced political and legal decisions by acting as parliament members and local judicial magistrates. No conflict of interest there, I'm sure. But social mobility also occurred. Some people could become part of the upper class if they earned enough through business or law to purchase land. So good for them. But 50% of the population in Elizabethan England were lower-class laborers. They tended to be, quote, farming contractors, moving from farm to farm in search of work throughout the year. Of course, during harvest times, farmers needed these contractors, but during non-harvest times, the lower class struggled to find work. It was extremely stressful. Laborers tended to eat barley, rye bread, and vegetable soup called pottage, which I'm sure wasn't very satiating. During prosperous times, they might have been able to afford some cheese, eggs, fish, and bacon, but they couldn't predict when that would happen. In fact, from 1594 to 98, a series of bad harvests damaged and limited grain crops, which increased their prices. During these 4 years, many laborers and their families starved. But you know what people thought?
Get your f***ing ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
I don't have time for this.
In 1601, the monarchy passed the Elizabethan Poor Law, which raised a pool of money to support the lower class and established some free housing for them. It didn't end poverty in England, but it remained in place for the next 200 years and set the foundation for a stronger welfare system in the UK. So that's good, I think. The entertainment field was pretty unique in the Elizabethan era. Stage theater was becoming quite popular among the masses. To them, it was like going to the movies.
Tonight at 7 p.m., come watch a book.
Curious!
In 1591, William Shakespeare was 27 and early in his career. So far, he had written the comedy The Taming of the Shrew and historical plays on Henry VI, but was probably itching to expand his repertoire and reach. And guess what people like to watch? Middle and lower class people would often stand and watch public displays of violence, like street brawls, animal fights, whippings, hangings, and beheadings. Whipping and flogging in particular were normal punishments for even misdemeanors, like petty theft and begging.
To the stocks!
Chelsea?
To the stocks!
Chelsea,
No, to the stocks!
It hurt and it was humiliating. Further, people would treat public executions like sporting events or carnivals. They shoved each other for a good view, and vendors would sell food and merch. Welcome back, viewers. We are currently awaiting the public execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. Bit of a nasty fallout with Queen Elizabeth, wouldn't you say, Nigel? Oh yes, I'd say so, Beatrice. It should be quite interesting today. Viewers, a gentle reminder, feel free to purchase a pamphlet containing Mary's last dying speech before they're sold out. Enjoy the event. On the day-to-day, men often carried weapons wherever they went. The murder rate was 10 times that of London today. So it's believed that the English had a strong appetite for graphic, violent entertainment because they were violent and resentful of the growing income inequality between the upper and lower classes. It just didn't seem fair.
I'm fed up with cabbage water.
Bloody hell!
Catholics and Protestants also fought over which religion was better. Men felt the need to defend their honor and relieve their many frustrations by engaging in or watching violence. In response to consumer demand for violent entertainment, Shakespeare likely took inspiration from his contemporaries like Thomas Kyd and Thomas Middleton, who had written the Spanish tragedy and the Revenger's tragedy respectively, Roman writers like Lucius Annaeus Seneca, Ovid, and Livy, as well as ancient Greek playwrights who had written many tragedies in their time. To this end, Shakespeare wrote The Lamentable Tragedy of Titus Andronicus, his first tragic play and one of his bloodiest. And initially, audiences went wild. They loved it. Until the 19th century under Queen Victoria, when violent entertainment became less less fashionable, and critics wrote scathing reviews of the play, calling it, quote, the most indigested piece in all his works, a heap of rubbish, scarcely tolerable, and it leaves no deep impression behind. But audiences experienced a renewed interest in Titus Andronicus in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, after realizing its applicability to their current circumstances. They appreciated how the play's brutality reflected and symbolized the world they lived in, one that includes different forms of violence against women and violent conflict between societies, communities, institutions, and countries.
We are in an age where we can view the violence of this play like an Elizabethan audience did. Just in the same way they had a taste for the Marlovian, we have a taste at the moment for the Tarantino.
The play begins with the Roman general Titus Andronicus returning to Rome after winning a 10-year war against the Goths. He's brought back Tamara, queen of the Goths, as a prisoner, along with her 3 sons and Aaron, Tamara's secret lover. Titus gives a speech about how he's lost many sons in the war, and as a form of retribution, he will kill Tamara's eldest son Alarbus right then. Tamara pleads with Titus not to do something so cruel, since he's already won the war, saying, "Victorious Titus, rue the tears I shed, a mother's tears in passion for her son. And if thy sons were ever dear to thee, O think my son to be as dear to me. Sufficeth not that we are brought to Rome to beautify thy triumphs and return captive to thee and to thy Roman yoke? But must my sons be slaughtered in the streets for valiant doings in their country's cause? Andronicus, stain not thy tomb with blood. Wilt thou draw near the nature of the gods?"
Draw near them then in being merciful. Sweet mercy is nobility's true badge.
"Thrice noble Titus, spare my firstborn son." But Titus doesn't listen and kills Alarbus. This would be considered a war crime under the Third Geneva Convention, but that didn't exist for another 350 years or so after the play was written. At this point, Tamara is enraged, and under her breath, she vows to avenge her son's death by destroying Titus's family, later saying,
I'll find a day to massacre them all.
Simultaneously, Titus nominates Saturninus, the eldest son of the previous Roman emperor, to be the incoming Roman emperor, which Saturn is grateful for and accepts. Saturn proposes marrying Titus's daughter Lavinia by way of thanks, and Titus is like,
Of course!
But Saturn's brother, Bassianus, steps in and says, "She's betrothed to me." Titus's sons are like,
"We've actually known for a while."
And they shuttle their sister away to get married to Bassianus, who she loves. And Titus is like, "How dare my sons oppose me? Don't worry, Emperor, I'll get her back." And he kills one of his own sons who's standing in his way. I kid you not. Saturn is like,
My God, what is wrong with you?
and then pivots by proposing to Tamara. She agrees, they marry, and she becomes the Empress of Rome, which strengthens her position considerably. Tamara's lover, Aaron, who's a real bad seed, convinces Tamara's 2 sons, Chiron and Demetrius, to rape Titus's daughter Lavinia, since they both lust for her. Tamara and Aaron lure Lavinia and her now husband Bassianus, again who is the emperor's brother, into the woods. At Tamara's command, her sons kill Bassianus, rape Lavinia, and cut off her hands and tongue, so she can't tell anyone who did this. Now, there's a lot of blood in this play overall. Sometimes theater tech teams have to put drains in the stage, but I think Lavinia's blood is the most visually striking because there's so much, it's all over her, and it's highly symbolic. I think it represents, in this case, men violently seizing her personhood, her body, voice, and independence.
And if thy tongue can speak, who 'twas that cut thy tongue and ravished thee? Call for sweet water! Sweet water! Sweet water! Wash thy hands!
I think her blood is also a stark reminder of how men have historically pillaged cities, villages, and camps, and enslaved and raped women to satisfy their sexual urges and threaten their enemies. So I think Tamara's choice to commission her sons to rape Lavinia is a clear act of war against Titus, not meant to balance the scales, but to exert dominance and weaken him. Lavinia's fate is arguably the worst of any character in the play, so her blood feels the most tragic to me. And then Aaron blames Bassianus' murder on Titus's sons, Martius and Quintus, and they are sentenced to death. Titus pleads to the Emperor Saturninus, saying, "Upon my feeble knee, I beg this boon with tears not lightly shed, that that this fell fault of my accursed sons, accursed if the faults be proven in them. Yet let me be their bail, for by my father's reverend tomb I vow, they shall be ready at your highness's will to answer their suspicion with their lives. This is familiar, isn't it? Remember when Tamara said almost the same thing to Titus? Then Lavinia comes out of the woodwork, looking like a walking nightmare, and he's like, oh my god, what happened to you? And she can't speak. It's horrible. Titus, his brother Marcus, and Lavinia cry and cry over this unspeakable turn of events. Aaron then goes to Titus's house and tells him that if one of the men from Titus's family cuts off their hand and gives it to the emperor, Titus's sons will live. Titus unhesitatingly offers his hand. Aaron cuts it off and takes it away, but 30 minutes later, Aaron comes back and presents Titus's sons' heads on a plate. Aaron was lying the whole time. I told you he's a piece of work. Titus is so flabbergasted and overwrought that he starts laughing. Like, could this day get any worse? Titus then commands his eldest son, Lucius, to go to the Goths, meaning Tamara's former subjects, who Titus conquered, to raise an army to attack Rome. Later, Lavinia puts a staff in her mouth and writes Chiron and Demetrius's names in the sand to inform her father and uncle who raped and mutilated her. Titus then addresses God, saying in Latin,
Magni Dominator Poli, tam lentus obscura, tam lentus dides.
Master of the great heavens, do you so calmly hear crimes, so calmly see them? His brother Marcus says, swear with me that we will prosecute by good advice mortal revenge upon these traitorous Goths, and see their blood and die with this reproach. Tamara then goes to visit Titus in disguise, along with her sons, thinking, Titus is going mad. Let's take advantage of that, and convince him to abandon his plan. She's like, I'm revenge, and here are my associates, rape and murder. We will help you avenge your grievances. Just call off the war on Rome, please. And Titus is like, you look so much like Tamara, and these two look like Chiron and Demetrius. You have the same height and build and everything.
I'm the Batman. Right?
What about the movie theater and popcorn?
But Titus agrees to call off his attack on Rome and tells Revenge, meaning Tamara, to leave Rape and Murder, meaning her sons, with him. Tamara turns to her sons and says, are you boys gonna be okay? And they're like, yeah, Mom, we'll be fine. But when Tamara leaves, Titus ushers in Lavinia and says, oh villains, Chiron and Demetrius, here stands the spring, whom you have stained with mud. This goodly summer with your winter mixed. You killed her husband, and for that vile fault, 2 of her brothers were condemned to death. My hand cut off and made a merry jest. Both her sweet hands, her tongue, and that more dear than hands or tongue, her spotless chastity. Inhuman traitors, you constrained and forced. What would you say if I should let you speak? Villains, for shame you could not beg for grace. Hark, wretches, how I mean to martyr you. Then he cuts their throats, drains their blood into a bowl, grinds their bones into a powder, and bakes them in a pie. Titus invites the Emperor Saturninus and Tamara to dinner, and he asks Saturn, do you think it's proper for a father to kill his daughter if she's been raped? And Saturn says, yes, because her existence is a constant reminder of her shame. And Titus is like, righto, and he kills his daughter Lavinia in front of everyone. And all this time, Tamara has been eating the pies, so Titus now reveals that she's eaten her sons, saying, there they are, both baked in this pie, whereof their mother daintily hath fed, eating the flesh that she herself hath bred. Now Tamara doesn't have a chance to react because Titus kills her right after speaking. Saturn avenges his wife's death by killing Titus, and Lucius avenges his father's death by killing Saturn. These deaths happen one after the other after the other. Finally, Lucius, Titus's eldest son, is declared the new emperor of Rome. The play has been performed many times on stage, sometimes set in different time periods and incorporating various theatrical elements like unusual props, makeup, and musical numbers to highlight the absurdity and even unspoken comedy of the writing.
It's wonderful, gruesome, funny, scary. It's terrific.
I thought it was a fantastic balance. You know it's going to be gory, but you got the humour there as well. It was superb.
It's actually gallows humour, isn't it? It's gallows humour.
As you've seen in the video so far, the play has also been converted to on-screen productions that feature Western actors in Western settings, with one notable exception, The Hungry in 2017. Here's my understanding of how the film came to be. In 2016, the British Council, an artistic, cultural, and educational organization, began a year-long global program to commemorate Shakespeare's 400-year death anniversary. As a part of that, Film London, a UK media agency, and Cinestan, a boutique production company based in Mumbai, announced a call for scripts for an Indian film adaptation of a Shakespeare play. Director Bornila Chatterjee joined forces with Danaji Dasgupta to apply for the grant. They discussed at length which play to adapt and ultimately decided on Titus Andronicus.
It's the first tragedy that Shakespeare wrote, and he was very young when he wrote it, so it's very messy compared to his later, more polished kind of works. But there's something so raw, uninhibited. He just did everything.
They submitted a script, won the grant, and recruited Qurban Qasem to be another writer and producer. They assembled a great cast and produced the film under Film London and the Cinestan Film Company, which made The Hungry a UK-India film collaboration. The film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in fall 2017 and was screened at several others, including the Mami Festival in Mumbai, where it won a special jury mention under the Oxfam Best Film on Gender Equality Award. It's currently available to stream on Amazon Prime Video, where I watched it. I think the film is impressive for several reasons. 1. The writing is minimalistic, which demonstrates discipline from the writers, and I really respect that. 2. It's visually striking, particularly the horror sequences. And 3. I think all the actors gave believable performances and worked well as an ensemble. However, I think The Hungry could be a stronger film. It gently addresses several topics, like revenge, patriarchal power dynamics, and the immoral practices of the wealthy class. But in my opinion, it doesn't go deep enough to leave a meaningful impact. I believe the film needed a longer runtime to accomplish this. In this video, I'll explain what I liked about the film and what I would have added if I had the power. But before we begin, I want to congratulate Bornila and her team on all their success. Releasing a film is an enormous feat, particularly when you don't have the financial backing from a huge film studio or production company. I applaud their hard work, and I'm very proud of them. The film adapted Titus Andronicus in 3 key ways. 1. It consolidates the characters to simplify the plot. Titus becomes Tathagat, Tamara becomes Tulsi, Saturninus becomes Sunny, Bassianus becomes Bentley, Lavinia becomes Loveleen, Chiron becomes Chirag, Alarbus becomes Ankur, and Aaron becomes Arun. The rest of the play's characters are omitted.
So really distilling it and bringing it down to its simplest form and just chasing sort of the primal emotions in the 2 main characters.
Tathagat Ahuja is the head of an agricultural corporation. His former business partner and friend, now deceased, has a daughter named Tulsi Joshi. At a New Year's Eve party, Tulsi's son Ankur joins a meeting with a politician to discuss a new business venture.
Hamara naya India hai. India of my generation.
Ankur sees Arun bribing the politician, and he records it on his phone. The politician becomes enraged, saying, "You set me up." He leaves and threatens to expose the company's many crimes. In response, Tathagat orders Arun to kill Ankur, which he does, and it's terrible. By the way, we don't find out who did this until the very end. Later that evening, Tulsi finds Ankur dead in a bathtub, leaving a suicide note behind. 2 years later, Tulsi is engaged to wed Sunny, Tathagat's son. Her other son, Chirag, lashes out at her, saying, "How could you marry Tathagat's son?" alluding to his suspicion that Tathagat killed Ankur, which is correct. But Tulsi is evasive and doesn't respond. Later, during one of the wedding festivities, Chirag and Tathagat's daughter Loveleen are quietly mourning Ankur's death, and Chirag accuses Tathagat of the murder.
Couldn't it be that you just saw what your dad wanted you to see?
Loveleen vehemently denies this and retaliates by calling Tulsi, Chirag's mother, a gold-digging whore. Chirag becomes furious and says, "I'll cut your tongue out," and he bashes her face and cuts her tongue out!
I knew that was coming and it still scared me.
Tulsi is horrified to learn this, but Arun comforts her, saying, "Stick to the plan." Loveleen is now missing and everyone's looking for her. Tathagat is worried too. In the meantime, Tulsi tries to proceed with her plan to kill Sunny with some poisoned cocaine, but he doesn't take it. By the way, earlier that evening, Loveleen's boyfriend Bentley had found some of the poisoned cocaine took it, and died in his car. Rest in peace. Loveleen re-emerges the next day after sleeping in a grassy field all night, and her face is a wreck. Tulsi finds her and is like, "Oh my god, please don't say anything." Loveleen can't talk due to her injuries, but she tries to grab a lamp, or chirag, to let people know who did this to her. Tulsi hangs her to protect her son and lights the lamp, not realizing she's giving herself away. Tathagat is aghast at his dead daughter, sees the lamp, and figures out that Chirag is at fault. He tells Arun to find Chirag, but Arun has already arranged for Chirag to return home. So Arun lies to Tathagat, saying he can't find Chirag. Tathagat discovers that Arun is working for him and Tulsi, so he kills Arun, compels Chirag to return, saying Tulsi will pay for what Chirag did, and ties him upside down. Sunny and Tulsi get married, Tathagat brings out the food, Sunny and Tulsi eat ravenously, and then Tathagat reveals that they were eating the dead Chirag. Tathagat kills Sunny, saying, and Tulsi kills Tathagat, leaving her the last one standing. 2. The second way the film adapts the play is by setting it in modern Delhi, to draw attention to the hidden lawlessness of the wealthy class in urban India. I love how the film draws attention to the irony of modern India and the dirty reality of wealthy industrialists using nature images. The film opens on a mountain of trash, which might be a reference to India's waste problem. Because of its increasing urbanization, urban consumption, and economic growth, the subcontinent is one of the top 10 contributors of municipal solid waste in the world. About 50% of its generated waste is dumped in landfills like this. So while India's diverse industries continue to be successful, such as in urban centers like Delhi, there seems to be a fundamental disconnect between those industries and the waste their operations and products generate, such as discarded food, plastic, biomedical supplies, and chemicals, which pose significant environmental and public health risks to the population.
Plastic has been found in air, water, soil, in human bodies, in vegetables.
Of course, consumer education around waste is important, but companies must take responsibility to make their products and supply chains more sustainable, and the government should provide incentives toward this. But anyway, I think the film shows this trash mountain to potentially point out how bullish industrialists like Tathagat don't care about the waste their businesses are generating. And that's a problem. Also, scavenger birds and smoke hover above the trash mountain, which are reminiscent of funeral pyres and corpses. This image could foreshadow the numerous deaths to come. Every so often, the film presents images of goats and other animals roaming the grassy hills, which suggests that the humans are slowly devolving into animals as they recklessly maim and kill each other. Several characters also die like animals. Ankur is suffocated and thrashes on the floor, which can happen to pigs when they're forced into metal chambers. Sunny's and Chirag's throats are stabbed and slit, respectively, which is how factory farmers slaughter chickens, pigs, cows, goats, and sheep. In the final frames, when almost all the humans are dead, goats flood the dining room and begin eating off the table, which could represent ecological succession. One example of this process is when nature takes over an ecosystem that's been ravaged by a natural disaster and repopulates it with new species of flora and fauna. I think this scene is meant to pierce the myth that humans are invincible. Rather, we are replaceable. Scientists urge us to slow climate change, not to save the Earth, but us. The film also uses sunlight to expose a hidden truth about industrial wealth. On one hand, the sunlight looks warm and silky like a sheet, but the dark, joyless circumstances give the sunlight an ominous vibe. It looks unnatural and lurid, almost like air pollution, which, as you know, is a huge problem in Indian cities due to their industrial reliance on fossil fuels, high vehicular usage, and crop and waste burning, to name a few. I have no doubt that business titans like Tathagat, who runs an agricultural corporation, contribute to all three.
And every year, the Supreme Court makes sure that they come down heavy on the government folks, and the same story is repeated. Everybody goes home, winter months are over, air pollution is forgotten.
The film also makes ample use of Delhi's winter fog. It looks really cool and eerie. The fog surrounds the estate, and characters often disappear or reappear from it. I think it represents many things, such as the untouchable world of the wealthy, their innumerable secrets and hidden agendas, their ability to erase people off the face of the earth, the unknowable danger that awaits them all, and finally, the egocentric nature of revenge, which compels us to fixate on our own perspective and become obsessed with punishing someone else. That's Titus and Tamara's whole problem and what ultimately kills them. In Act 5, Scene 2 of the play, Tamara says, "There's not a hollow cave or lurking place, no vast vast obscurity or misty veil, where bloody murder or detested rape can couch for fear but I will find them out, and in their ears tell them my dreadful name, revenge, which makes the foul offender quake. Although in that moment, Tamara assumes the role of revenge itself, I think she reveals a more cosmic lesson. All crimes against humanity can only be hidden so long and so well. The characters in The Hungry might consider the fog, or mist, like in Tamara's monologue, to be a comforting cloak that conceals their violence. But this is delusional. I think the image of Loveleen re-emerging from the fog after her attack is meant to demonstrate that all violence will be discovered and trigger reciprocal violence. Immoral actions beget nasty consequences, per the law of Karma. 3. The third way the film adapts the play is that it reframes the original text to make Tamara the protagonist rather than Titus, so that the audience can empathize with her grievances and observe how she attempts to get justice in India's modern but still patriarchal society.
The character that Tiska plays is basically ignored by Shakespeare. Although what happened to her is excruciating, there's no empathy that you feel for her or meant to feel for her in the original play. So we've tried to very much turn that on its head and say, open your eyes up to something which affects a mother deeply, and then seeing in this very heightened world, in this heightened story, how that mother then goes about rectifying the wrong that she felt.
I like this, but I think the film could have gone further on this point and the previous one. The runtime for The Hungry is about 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is half of what I would expect for an Indian film, and I think it would have benefited from a longer runtime to flesh out its themes and the emotional impact of its writing and performances. Here's what I think could have been done in the added runtime. I believe the most critical and compelling dynamic in The Hungry and Titus Andronicus is that of Tathagat and Tulsi, aka Titus and Tamara. In the play, Titus and Tamara's enmity is established early, triggering a cascade of sadistic crimes and deceptions to exact revenge and counter-revenge, which again kills them both. It's a whirlwind of gore and grief that reveals many things about the dark side of human nature, civil ethics, and sexual politics. I think The Hungry does a fair job of focusing on the brooding tension between Tulsi and Tathagat, using silent gazes exchanged during mealtimes, the haldi ceremony, and in between. I think that's great. But I wish there were more instances of them looking at each other with clear animosity, without the veneer of high society politeness, or anyone else noticing. Tulsi could furtively pace outside Tathagat's room and peer inside because she's obsessed with what he's doing at any given moment.
I've got posters of you and pictures. I used to stand outside your castle and watch you turn your lights on and off.
Tathagat could stare at Tulsi from a high balcony and precariously hold a cane above her head as if he might drop it on her, and they could toy with each other's emotions when in public, using coded language to allude to the violence they've committed or subtly reveal to each other what they know the other person has done. I think these scenes could transform the film into a more intense psychological cat-and-mouse thriller, and I think viewers would have fun trying to decode the messages in Tulsi and Tathagat's words and gazes, as well as enjoy the suspense of Tulsi and Tathagat constantly sparring to get the upper hand. The power balance keeps shifting between them, and we don't know who's going to win. Another way to strengthen the emotional core of the film would be to include another few scenes that illustrate Tulsi's grief for her son Ankur's death. Maybe one scene the day after she discovers Ankur's body when she's fully registered his death, and another in the present day when she's remembering his youth and innocence, which could demonstrate how strongly Ankur's death still affects her and explain her commitment to avenging him. I think these scenes would help the audience better empathize with Tulsi's maternal grief and more fully comprehend the cruelty of Ankur's murderer. He was such a sweet boy.
If I could, I'd have them do even more despicable things, but we couldn't fit that into 100 minutes.
Tulsi's maternal grief and rage make her a formidable opponent to the ruthless Tathagat. And I actually think it would have been good if she either killed or wrongfully blamed more characters to mislead Tathagat, because it would fit with her intention
to massacre them all.
Maybe Tulsi could also do covert things to sabotage Tathagat's business empire, using finely worded legal clauses or untraceable phone calls to government officials or to Tathagat himself, which I'm sure would drive him crazy. I think these scenes would have sent a more powerful message about the futility of revenge, because Tulsi and Tathagat would have more equally engaged in savage violence, albeit due to different motivations. Tulsi for love, and Tathagat for love, pride, and greed. But in both cases, revenge led them to the same place, the dining room. I think it would have been great if the film included more scenes in the dining room, which could serve as a centralized location that keeps getting emptier and more echoey as Tulsi and Tathagat kill or imprison more people. The audience might observe that these two are slowly chipping away at all their loved ones to get back at each other, as further exemplified by this sad, empty wedding party. No one's around or alive anymore. Now, The Hungry tries to comment on the ruinous consequences of revenge and the unseen criminality that occurs among the wealthy class in North India, both of which are meaty topics. No pun intended. But I think the film could have explored these topics further by again including more scenes in the dining room where the family members and guests eat meat, or scenes where Tathagat is preparing meat in the kitchen. The camera could linger on the blood and grease oozing from the meat and compel the audience to make a connection between the meat and the innocent animals that were slaughtered. As the film goes on, these dining scenes could feel increasingly nauseating, but that would be the point, all leading up to the last scene where Tulsi unknowingly eats human flesh. These cooking and dining scenes would make full use of the film's title, The Hungry, and enable the audience to perceive that what Tulsi and Tathagat are hungry for is grotesque. When Tulsi finds out that she's eaten her son Chirag, her horror could partially stem from her realization that she's eaten herself, her own flesh and blood. Her bloodlust and desire to punish Tathagat haven't led to victory or personal justice like she thought, but self-destruction. All the meat that Tulsi and Tathagat have consumed in this dining room could be akin to them consuming innocent people for the sake of their revenge and morbid pleasure.
But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth. The texture. I liked it. I liked the way it made me feel.
Similarly, the family and guests' gluttony for meat could represent how the wealthy class in India profits off of working class people. They consume working class labor, don't raise employee wages to match inflation, and hoard company earnings like stored fat on their bodies to maintain and grow their already exorbitant wealth.
CEO brags that he gets extremely excited firing people and replacing them with AI. Quote, AI doesn't go on strike, it doesn't ask for a pay raise.
The film also could have commented on the lawlessness of upper-class Indians by making the deaths grislier.
It was really important to us to make this like super beautiful, super heightened, because that's when like the deaths become that much more gruesome. And we also just wanted the deaths themselves to be rather beautiful. So you kind of like, you're watching it and what you said, like you laugh in disbelief, because otherwise like the frame is just, it's rather gorgeous. But all this horrible stuff is happening, like unfolding before your eyes.
I get what she's saying, and Ankur's death in particular looks like a painting, particularly this one depicting Jean-Paul Marat, a French activist who fought for the rights of lower-class people during the French Revolution, albeit using violent protests, which I don't agree with, and was later assassinated while in his bathtub, and this one depicting the philosopher Seneca, who committed suicide after the Roman Emperor Nero accused Seneca of conspiring against him and ordered Seneca to die. It's pretty fitting for the film, don't you think? I don't know if the team behind The Hungry had all this in mind when they filmed this scene, but if not, it's a cool coincidence. But anyway, the beautification of death in The Hungry softens its emotional impact for me. These deaths feel a little too clean and pretty, and therefore less real, in my opinion. And to be fair, the cinematography overall looks ethereal because of its dynamic colorscapes, fountains, pools, and high walls, which suggest that the wealthy class live in their own world, which they kind of do. But I think this dreamlike dollhouse aesthetic detracts from the gravity of the very real destruction that's happening. The violence feels cloistered and cushioned, if that makes sense. I think it would have been more effective to make the deaths look grimy and chaotic, to more starkly contrast with the pristine, opulent hotel and mansion. The idea of rich people mercilessly killing anyone who poses a threat to their wealth is a sharp contrast to the sophistication of their class. But anyway, I think if the film chose to starkly juxtapose affluence with blood and body parts, it could have sent a stronger message about the filthy politics of the rich, their willingness to engage in corruption at every level and civil domain, while silencing anyone who stands in the way of their growing empires. I think we, as a society, tend to idolize the rich because we envy what they have. But this alternative framing in The Hungry might help the audience confront the fact that the wealthy class are just people with tremendous privilege. I'm not saying they're unintelligent or didn't work for it, but don't tell me they didn't step on a few necks to get to billionaire status. I mean, come on.
Our clients often had massive political privilege and the privilege of lucky timing. They could get college for close to nothing or nothing. Modest salaries, could afford houses. Their house values and stock market portfolios have exploded in ways we probably won't see again.
And it's interesting to observe that rich people experience greed, even when they have so much. Depicting the deaths in The Hungry as roadkill could also highlight how prideful characters like the Tagat become more beastly when in power and enraged. Seeing this, the audience might realize why it's so vital to elect, promote, and support empathetic, emotionally stable leaders who can handle political and economic power. I think it's important that wealthy people earn our respect in how they use their wealth. Are they enriching society or mostly themselves? The Roman society, depicted in Titus Andronicus, is deeply patriarchal. Women are depicted as either chaste Madonnas like Lavinia, or quote-unquote manipulative whores like Tamara. I'm a huge fan of The Hungry's focus on Tamara versus Titus, which subverts the play's misogynistic perspective in favor of a more feminist or gender-equal perspective. And I also like how the film updates Lavinia. Unlike in the play, Loveleen has sexual autonomy and is allowed to express her perspective on the inciting incident of the film, namely her father's hand in killing Ankur. Loveleen is soon silenced after that, but I think her non-verbal horror scenes are meant to illustrate the fall of human civilization in favor of demonic or beastly civilization. The injuries to her hands and face compel her to move in animalistic ways, crawling, groaning, and running like Naruto. It's chilling, I tell ya. These sequences are great for demonstrating how violence against women, which is still common in South Asia, is abominable. Notably, in the play, Lavinia is objectified and silenced several times. First, by her father Titus, when he agrees to give her hand in marriage to Saturninus without asking her permission. Again, when Chiron and Demetrius rape and mutilate her in ways that prevent her from speaking again. And a third time, when Titus murders her because he can't bear the shame of her rape. In the film, Chirag initially silences Loveleen when he beats her, and then Tulsi hangs and forever silences her, which could allude to how women sometimes dissuade other women from speaking up about their trauma, or don't believe in other women's trauma, maybe due to internalized misogyny, fear of stirring the pot in a patriarchal setting. Or because, their own son did it. Oh gosh. But I think Dr. Anna Kurian made a really good point when she wrote in a paper that it might have been better for the Tagat to kill Loveleen because perhaps her mangled and possibly violated state could stain his reputation, and also he can't bear to look at her. Now you might be thinking, the Tagat loves his daughter, why would he kill her? But here's the thing, Titus loves his daughter too, and he kills her, not because she communicated that she wanted to die, but because Titus didn't want to be reminded of what happened to her. I think he does it for his sake. So in the play, love for one's daughter doesn't seem to be the issue, rather it's shame. The Tagat might justify killing Loveleen because he wants to believe he's putting her out of her misery, when really he's protecting his company from a possible PR investigation, and he doesn't want to look at Loveleen in this state anymore. Before he hangs or shoots her, maybe the Tagat could plug his ears and look away from her face, so he can remain blind to whether she wants to die or not. In this scenario, only his desire matters. This writing choice could draw attention to the fact that honor killings of young women still occur in India, including among the upper class, though they are better equipped to cover it up. And I like the fact that the Thaga doesn't kill Loveleen in the existing film. It makes sense that Tulsi does this because she's protecting Chirag. But if the filmmakers wanted to adhere to Titus's killing of Lavinia and comment on the continued practice of honor killings, they could conceivably take the film in this direction. While Titus Andronicus might be one of Shakespeare's least liked plays, its themes are quite dense and reveal several insights about modern society, such as the pervasiveness of violence, cruelty, and tribalism between communities and countries, the explosive consequences of putting volatile people in power, and how patriarchal societies objectify and silence women.
It's about fatherhood, it's about the brutalism of war, it's about nobility and civility, justice, and how do you square that with the notion of revenge. These are problems which never go away from mankind.
I think The Hungry is a morbid yet strangely beautiful film that touches upon several interesting ideas relevant to modern Indian society, namely how the wealthy class routinely engages in corruption to perpetually tilt the balance of power in their favor, and how revenge destroys everything in its wake. The film held my attention, but I left wanting more. I believe extending the runtime and amplifying a few key features would have delivered a stronger emotional impact and clearer messages to the audience. Let me know what you thought of the film, and if you have any horror or thriller recommendations, leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much. Bye!